Hello everyone. This video is brought to you by Newton's Group of Institutions. My name is Arvind from the Department of CSE. In this video, I'll be talking about the object model. This particular topic is also being covered from the Object-Oriented Analysis and Design with Applications, 3rd edition by Grade A Buch. In our previous video, we have discussed about the complexity. Now, in this video, we will discuss about object models, the environment of object models, foundations of the object model, elements of the object model, applying the object model. The object model. An object model is a logical interface, software or a system that is modeled through the use of object-oriented techniques. It enables the creation of an architectural programming. An object model is part of object-oriented programming lifecycle. So, an object model helps us to describe or define a software system in terms of objects and classes. It defines the interfaces or interactions between the different models, inheritance, encapsulation, and other object-oriented interfaces and its features. Coming to the evolution of the object model, there is a shift in focus from programming in the small to the programming in the large. So, during the period of software development of upgradation, we faced many challenges. One is the capability and capacity of the machines increased. People became more aware of computers. The cost of hardware became low. Computer systems improved fast with the help of most powerful systems and availability of the user-friendly operating system. So, software requirements are increased because the use of computers and its applications got increased. So, for the development of software system, the attention shifted from simple programming. The techniques for these simple writing programs could not be upgraded. So, this affected and led to more complex systems. So, here the evolution of higher ordered programming languages, new industrial strength software systems are larger and more complex than their predecessors. So the development of more expressive programming languages advanced the decomposition, abstraction and hierarchy. So Wenger had classified some of the more popular programming languages in generations according to the language features. In this session, the object-oriented through processing is intended for someone just like an object-oriented language and who wants to understand the basic concepts before jumping into the code, or to someone who wants to understand the infrastructure behind an object-oriented programming language they are already using. Now, let us explore to the history and evolution of the object-oriented languages so that we will have a better understanding of what makes an object-oriented language a little bit tricky. Surprisingly, although many of us believe that object-oriented technologies are fairly new, object-oriented languages have their own origins in the early 1960s itself. In fact, much of the history of the structured and object-oriented programming overlaps to some degree. What really makes a programming language an object-oriented programming language? And when did these object-oriented movements really start? Many people point to the early 1960s as the time when Simula 67 introduced the concept of objects. As the name implies, Simula was created to aid in simulations. It is not a coincidence that simulation typically model real-world systems. Many of these real-world systems contain hundreds or thousands of interacting parts. Here, in these coming slides, we will follow object-oriented language evolution through the discussion of several object-oriented languages. So many point to Smalltalk as the first pure object-oriented language. Interestingly, C++, perhaps the most commercial object-oriented success, is not truly an object-oriented. And finally, we will learn why Java was released with such a fanfare and what made its proponents consider it a complete programming language package. Here, similar by 1960s, programmers realized that the programming system need to be broken up into small manageable pieces. The introduction of Simula 67 brought within the first two programming object classes in the form of inheritance. Therefore, Simula is an important milestone in any decisions of object-oriented programming language. Coming to Smalltalk, many considered that the first truly object-oriented language was Smalltalk, developed at the Learning Research Group of Xerox Research Center in the early 1970s. In Smalltalk, everything is really an object that enforces the object-oriented paradigm. It is very impossible to write a program in Smalltalk that is not object-oriented. So this is not the case for other languages that supports objects, such as C++, Visual Basic, and Java for that matter. Here we need to understand C++ and Java are not purely object-oriented. C++ has object-oriented features, but we can use non-objects in C++. Java is mostly object-oriented, but the primitive data types such as integers and floats are not implemented as objects. So Smalltalk is actually much more than a programming language, and Smalltalk first introduced many other concepts which are being implemented in many applications such as browsers, windows, and pop-up menus. So from object-oriented perspective, Smalltalk supported inheritance and the concept of sending messages between the objects. Coming to C++, although Smalltalk gave object-oriented development a certain amount of legitimacy in the marketplace, it took C++ to bring object-oriented development what is really needed widespread acceptance in the marketplace. C++ has its roots in the projects to simulate software running on distributed systems. C++ was originally implemented in 1982 under the name C with classes. As the name suggests, the most important concept of C with classes was the addition of classes. This class concept provided the encapsulation now requisite with object-oriented languages. So, an interesting point about C++ is that a large percentage of software that currently runs on the PC-based systems is written in C++, and also much of the embedded systems work is still done with C and C++. Whereas coming to Java origins are in consumer electronics. In 1991, Sun Microsystems began to investigate how it might exploit the growing market. So OOPS concept in Java are main idea behind Java's object-oriented programming. They are an abstraction, encapsulation, inheritance, and polymorphism. So basically, Java object-oriented programming concepts lets us create working methods and variables, then reuse all these parts of them without compromising the security. Whereas coming to C#.NET, Microsoft responded to the popularity of Java by producing a version of Java called Visual J++. So Microsoft developed a language called C# that became the foundation for company's .NET platform. As with Java, C# relied heavily on the success and failure of early languages. The .NET development environment included many of the really good characteristics of several other platforms. C# like Java uses C or C++ syntax. Coming to Visual Basic .NET, VB6 is one of the most popular programming languages, and the programming environment of VB6 has been a huge impact on state-of-the-art development environment. So VB6 was not totally object-oriented. It did not implement inheritance completely. VB6 implements interface inheritance but not implementation inheritance. Now, let us go to the next slide. So here, let us consider the structure of each generation of the programming languages. In this figure, we see the topology of most first and early second generation programming languages. By topology, we mean the basic physical building blocks of the language and how those parts can be connected. In this figure, we see that for languages such as Fortran and COBOL, the physical building blocks for all the applications is the subprograms. Here, applications are written in these languages exhibit only global data and subprograms. So here, the arrows in this figure indicate dependencies of the subprogram on the various data. So an error in one part of the program can have an effect across the rest of the system because the global data structures are exposed for all subprograms to see. Now, by 1960s, programmers were finally begun recognizing as important intermediate point between the problem and computers. So the first software abstraction, now called the procedural abstractions, grew directly out of the paramagnetic view of the software. The realization that subprograms could serve as an abstraction mechanism had three important consequences. Firstly, languages were invented that support a variety of parameter passing mechanisms. And second, the foundation of these structured programming languages were laid, manifesting themselves in language support for the nesting of subprograms and the development of theories regarding the control structures and the scope and visibility of a declaration. Third, structured design methods emerged, offering guidance to designers trying to build large systems using subprograms as basic building blocks. Coming to this, here starting with Fortran 2 and appearing in most late third generation programming languages, another important structuring mechanism evolved to address the growing issues of programming in the language. So larger programming projects means larger development teams, and thus the need to develop different parts of the same program independently. So in this figure, modules were rarely recognized as important abstract mechanisms. So in a practice, they were used simply to group subprograms that were most likely to change together. So most languages of this generation, while supporting some sort of module structure, had few rules that required semantic consistency among the module interfaces. Data abstraction is important to mastering the complexity. The nature of abstractions that may be achieved through the use of procedures as well as suited to the description of abstract operations, but is not practically well suited to the description of abstract objects. So this is a serious drawback. So it has two important consequences. One is data-driven design methods emerged from data abstraction, and theories regarding the concept of the type appeared. So many languages such as Smalltalk, C++, Ada and Java were developed. Physical building blocks in these languages is the module, which represents a logical collection of classes and objects instead of the subprograms. Suppose procedures and functions are verbs and pieces of data are nouns, then procedural oriented program is organized around the verbs and object oriented program is organized around the nouns. So here data and operations are united in such a way that the fundamental logical building blocks of our system are no longer algorithms but are classes and objects. So in large applications systems, classes, objects and modules essential yet insufficient means of abstractions. So in this figure, we illustrated the topology of languages called object-based or object-oriented for small to moderate-sized applications. Here, the physical building blocks in these type of languages is the module, which represents the logical collection of classes and objects instead of subprograms. So here, we can clearly see the physical structure of small to moderate-sized object-oriented application appear as a graph but not as a tree. So here the topology shown for these large systems, we find clusters of abstraction built-in layers on the top of one another. Here we can clearly observe that at any given level of abstraction, we find meaningful collection of objects that collaborate to achieve some higher level of behavior. Here in foundation of object models, structured designing methods evolve to guide developers who are trying to build a complex system using algorithms as their fundamental building blocks. Similarly, object-oriented designing methods has evolved to help developers exploit the expressive power of object-based and object-oriented programming languages using classes and objects as their basic building blocks. However, there are limits to the amount of complexity we can handle using only algorithms or algorithmic decomposition. Thus, we must turn to object-oriented decomposition. Furthermore, if we try to use the languages such as C++ and Java as if they were only traditional algorithmic oriented languages. Here, we not only miss the power available to us, but we usually end up worse off than if we have used an older languages such as C and Pascal. So here, the following events have contributed to the evolution of object-oriented concepts. Advance in computer architecture including capability systems and hardware support for operating system concepts. Advances in programming languages as demonstrated in Simula, Smalltalk, CLU and ADA. Advances in programming methodologies including modularization and information hiding. And we would add to this 3 more contributions to the foundation of the object model, that is advance in database model, research in artificial intelligence, advance in philosophy and cognitive science. To understand the foundation of object model, we will see the 3 basic terms that we will frequently use the notation of what is object-oriented analysis, what is object-oriented design. Often they are so interrelated that they are referred together as object-oriented analysis and design, as in the title of this course, and we will get introduced to what is object-oriented programming. So the object models, the foundation of object models certainly is in object-oriented in analysis and design. Please note that this whole design analysis and design paradigm methodologies has been or represents an evolutionary development, but not a revolutionary. One, what it means is that it is not a single part breaking part or a part breaking approach by which we will quickly create a complexity new system. So object-oriented analysis is a method of analysis that examines the requirements from the perspective of the classes and objects found in the vocabulary of the problem domain. Whereas object-oriented design is a method of design which encompasses the process of object-oriented decomposition and a notation for depicting both logical and physical as well as static and dynamic models of the system under the design. So there are 2 important parts to this definition. One which leads to an object-oriented decomposition, and second uses a different notations to express the different models of the logical and physical design of the system. Here, logic I mean is classes and object structures, whereas physical, when I mean, are nothing but modules and process architecture, in addition to static and dynamic aspects of the system. So the support of object-oriented decomposition is what makes object-oriented design quite different from structural design. Coming to object-oriented programming, it is a method of implementing in which programs are organized as cooperative collection of objects, each of which represents an instance of some class and whose classes are all members of hierarchy of classes united via inherent relationships. So here there are 3 important parts to the definition. Firstly, object-oriented program uses objects and not algorithms as its fundamental building blocks. Second, in each object is an instance to some class. Third, classes may be related to one another via inheritance relationship, that is hierarchy. So a program may appear to be object oriented, but if any of these elements is missing, then it is not an object oriented programming. Kinds of programming paradigm. According to Jenkins and Glasgow, most programmers work in one language and use only one programming style. They have not been exposed to alternate ways of thinking about the problem. So programming style is a way of organizing programs on the basis of some conceptual model of programming and an appropriate language to make programs written in a style clear. Here there are 5 kinds of programming styles. One is procedural oriented. So these are algorithms for design of computations. Whereas coming to object oriented, we use classes and objects. And in logical oriented is goal oriented, often expressed in predicate calculus. Whereas rules oriented, if the rules of the design of knowledge base. And in constraint oriented, it is based on the invariant relationship. So there is no single programming style that is best for all kinds of applications. For example, rule-oriented programming would be best suited for the design of knowledge base and procedural-oriented programming. And procedural-oriented programming would be best for the design of computations or intense operations. From experiences, the object-oriented style is the best suited to the broadest set of applications. Indeed, this programming paradigm often serves as an architectural framework in which we employ other paradigms. So each of these styles of programming is based on its own conceptual framework. Each requires a different mindset, a different way of thinking about the problem. So for all things object-oriented, the conceptual framework is the object model. So there are 4 major elements of this model. One is abstraction, encapsulation, modularity, and hierarchy. So there are 3 major elements of these object models: typing, concurrency, and persistence. Now, let us see the meaning of abstraction. An abstraction denotes the essential characteristics of an object that distinguishes it from all other kinds of objects and thus provides crisply defining conceptual boundaries relative to the perspective of the viewer. Here, an abstraction focuses on the outside view of an object and so serves to separate an object's essential behavior from its implementation. And the abstraction focuses on the essential characteristics of some objects relative to the perspective of the viewer. So all abstractions have static as well as dynamic properties. For example, a file object takes up a certain amount of space on a particular memory device. It has name and it has content. These are all static properties. So the value for each of these properties is dynamically relative to the lifetime of the object. A file object may grow or it may shrink in size, or its name may get changed, or its contents may change. Whereas in procedural oriented style of programming, the activity that changes the dynamic value of the object is the central part of all the programs. Things happen when such programs are called and statements get executed. In a rule-oriented style of programming, things happen when new events cause rules to fire, which in turn may trigger other rules and so on. So here, in object-oriented style of programming, things happen whenever we operate on an object. So here, coming to the properties of good abstraction are: abstractions should be well named, abstractions should be coherent, abstraction should be accurate, an abstract should have only a minimal details of the entity, and an abstraction should be complete. And abstractions can be characterized as entity abstracts, action abstracts, coincidental abstraction, virtual machine abstraction. Now, let us see the meaning of the encapsulation. Here, encapsulation hides the details of the implementation of an object. If you notice, abstraction and encapsulation are complementary concepts, where the abstraction focuses on the observed behavior of the object, whereas encapsulation focuses on the implementation that gives rise to this behavior. So encapsulation is most often achieved through information hiding, which is the process of hiding all the secrets of an object that cannot contribute to its essential characteristics. Typically, the structure of an object is hidden as well as the implementation of its methods. For abstraction to work, implementation must be encapsulated. In practice, this means that each class must have two parts, an interface and an implementation. For example, in the persons class that is being shown in this particular figure, set name operation can only set or modify the name of the person, while the get name operation is used to obtain the name of the person. So here, encapsulation thus aids in data hiding by providing access to the object's data only through the operations it offers, that is set name and get name. So this is called an interface. So these external interfaces provide a set of methods that accept the response to a particular kind of message. Now, let us see the meaning of the modularity. So the act of prioritizing the program into individual components can reduce the complexity to some degree. So modularization consists of dividing a program into modules which can be compiled separately but which can have connections with other modules. So modularity is the property of the system that has been decomposed into a set of cohesive and loosely coupled modules. Coming to the meaning of hierarchy, abstraction is a good thing, but in all aspects, the most trivial applications we may find may have different abstractions that we can comprehend one at a time. So encapsulation helps us to manage the complexity by hiding the inside view of our abstraction. And modularity helps also by giving us a way to cluster logically related abstractions. But still, this is not enough. So a set of abstractions often form a hierarchy, and by identifying these hierarchies in our design, we greatly simplify our understanding of the problem. So here, the two most important hierarchies in complex systems are its class structure and its object structure. So here, class hierarchy is a mechanism that is used to express the similarities between the classes. It portrays the generalization or specialization relationships, where generalization tells us what are the similarities between the classes and specialization tells us the difference between these classes. So a generalized class is a superclass, while a specialized class is a subclass. For example, in the generalized class, an employee and customer is the specialized class of the person. You can see in the figure 3.1. The object hierarchy is represented using abstractions. And aggregation is used to treat a collection of objects as a single object. For example, a car consists of tires and engine as seen in this figure 3.2. Coming to the meaning of typing typing lets us express our abstractions so that the programming language in which we implement them can be made to enforce design decisions. So a given programming language may be strongly typed, weakly typed, or even untyped, but still be called as an object-oriented. So here, particularly strongly typed typing introduces semantic dependencies such that even small changes in the interface of the base class requires a recompletion of all subclasses. So, typing of a class prevents objects of different types from being interchanged. Binding is the association of variables or classes to their own type. So the programming language can be categorized as strongly typed or weakly typed languages. And in strongly typed languages, the violation of type conformance can be detected at the compile time. So this type of binding variable to their types called as a static binding or early binding. Whereas coming to weakly typed languages, violation of typing conformances cannot be detected until the runtime. So here, variables are bound to their type at only execution time. So this is called dynamic binding or late binding. So static binding is fast but rigid, while dynamic binding is slow and which is flexible. Coming to the meaning of persistence, an object is a software which takes up some amount of space and exists for a particular amount of time. So here, persistence saves the state of class of an object across the time or space, introducing the concept of a persistence to the object model gives rise to object-oriented database. So, some object-oriented programming languages provide direct support for persistence. Java provides Enterprise Java Beans, EJBeans, and Java Date objects. Now coming to the meaning of concurrency. Concurrency allows different objects to act at the same time. For certain kind of problems, an automated system may have to handle many different events simultaneously. So every program has at least one thread to control, where a system running on a single CPU can only achieve the illusion of concurrent threads of control, usually by means of some time slicing algorithms. Elements of object model. Sorry, we have already seen concurrence. Applications of object model. So object-oriented analysis and design may be the only method which can be employed to attack the complexity inherent in large systems. Some of the applications of object models are air traffic control system, animation systems, business or insurance softwares, business data processing in CAD applications, database, export systems, office automation, robotics, telecommunication, telemetry systems, etc. So these are the different applications where we can use this object-oriented analysis and design. Thank you all.